They ordered her to remove her uniform, but the base commander was shocked when he saw the tattoo on her back. What happened next was genius. Staff Sergeant Helen Pierce adjusted her dress uniform, smoothed out the wrinkles, and walked with her head held high towards the building where she was summoned. As soon as the door opened, she heard the sharp voice of her superior. "Sergeant Pierce, close the door behind you." The sergeant did as she was told and turned around slowly. She stood stiffly at attention and waited for her superior to speak. But what he said next left her stunned. "Why didn't you take off your uniform yesterday like I asked you to?" Sergeant Pierce swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, sir, but I have a tattoo on my back, and I didn't think they would let me keep my rank if they saw it. I wasn't sure if it was against regulations." Colonel Bennington stepped out from behind his desk and approached her. His face was grim. "Regulations are clear. All tattoos must be removed when wearing a uniform. That's why I called you in. You will go home now and come back tomorrow wearing your plain clothes and no makeup. Understood?" Sergeant Pierce had never been in trouble because of her appearance. In fact, she was known throughout the base as an exemplary soldier who excelled in her work. It was so shocking that her superiors were suddenly scrutinizing her appearance that she blurted out, "But sir, I've been working with the team all week, and we have a mission tonight." "Who can replace me at the last minute?" The colonel shook his head disapprovingly. "There are no exceptions to the rules. You will do as I say and report to my office tomorrow at 10 a.m. sharp. Dismiss." Sergeant Pierce saluted him stiffly, then turned and walked away without another word. Back in her tiny apartment, Sergeant Pierce took off her uniform and stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her dark hair fell over her shoulders and partially hid the silver star pinned to her uniform. This star was proof of her many years of faithful service to her country. Suddenly, she felt like a young recruit again, full of doubts and insecurities. After all, how could she have been so naive as to think that a tattoo would get her into trouble? Her tattoo wasn't just any design either. It was a symbol that represented her entire family. It was an ancient Celtic knot that symbolized eternity. Inside the knot were 4 smaller knots, each representing one of her parents and grandparents. And because she had no siblings, the ends of the 4 smaller knots were tied together to form a whole, symbolizing her close bond with her only living relative, her grandmother. When she got the tattoo, she was young and reckless, but most of all, she was proud. She thought she could hide it under her uniform, and it wouldn't be a problem. But now she was paying the price for her youthful indiscretion. The next morning, Sergeant Pierce arrived at the colonel's office exactly on time. She wore a simple black dress that reached her knees, and her hair was pulled back tightly from her face. She looked like any other young woman her age, except for the sadness in her eyes. "Sergeant Pierce," the colonel greeted her curtly, "I want you to know that this isn't personal. I'm not singling you out to make an example of you. It's just that the regulations are clear and everyone has to follow them." "Yes, sir," Sergeant Pierce replied quietly. The colonel leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "You know what the punishment is for failing to follow regulations, don't you?" "Yes, sir," Sergeant Pierce said softly. "It's demotion and a fine." The colonel nodded grimly. "That's right, so it's settled then. You'll be demoted 1 rank and you'll have to pay a fine." "Yes, sir," Sergeant Pierce whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. The colonel sighed. He didn't enjoy handing out punishments like this, especially to such a good soldier. But he was just following orders from his superiors. He was merely the enforcer. "Is there anything you want to say before I carry out the punishment?" "No, sir," Sergeant Pierce replied, wiping away her tears. Sergeant Pierce walked out of the colonel's office. She could hear him muttering to himself, "By the book, by the book. They always want us to follow the book, but what about compassion? What about common sense? Do they expect me to treat her like a criminal? I mean, it's just a tattoo. Everyone's got 1 or 2 of them these days." He shook his head sadly and returned to work. Meanwhile, Sergeant Pierce made her way to the bathroom. She looked at herself in the mirror, her reflection staring back at her accusingly. "What am I going to do?" she whispered. Just then, a kind-faced older woman entered the bathroom. "Are you all right, dear?" she asked, noticing the tears in Sergeant Pierce's eyes. "I'm fine," Sergeant Pierce replied quickly, wiping away her tears. "I just have something in my eye." The older woman smiled understandingly and patted her on the shoulder. "Don't worry, dear. Know what it's like to be young and make mistakes. Just do your best and try to make up for it." With that, she left the bathroom, and Sergeant Pierce was left alone with her thoughts. Suddenly, an idea struck her like a bolt of lightning. She hurried to the washroom, splashed some water on her face, and went straight to the commanding officer's office. She knocked on the door and entered without waiting for a response. The colonel looked up from his paperwork and was surprised to see her. "Sergeant Pierce, what can I do for you?" "Sir," Sergeant Pierce said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'd like to appeal my demotion." "Appeal? On what grounds?" The colonel raised an eyebrow in surprise. "On the grounds that my tattoo does not violate any regulations," Sergeant Pierce said firmly. "What?" The colonel's jaw dropped in surprise. "How can you say that?" "Regulations explicitly state that all tattoos must be covered while in uniform, sir. That is true. But my tattoo is on my back, and I've never had a problem with it until now. If I wanted to cover it, I would have done so long ago." "But why didn't you, Sergeant Pierce? Why wait until now?" "Because I thought it was my right as a woman to decide what part of my body I show in public. It's not fair for you to tell me how to dress or what to wear. I'm a grown woman, and I can make my own decisions." The colonel blinked in surprise. He had never seen such defiance in Sergeant Pierce, and he couldn't help but admire her courage. "Sergeant Pierce, I appreciate your candor, but I'm afraid the law is on my side." "Sir, I understand that you're just doing your job, but I believe that my tattoo is a form of self-expression, and it's part of who I am. I'm not asking you to change the law. I'm just asking for an exception to be made in my case. Please, sir, I beg of you." The colonel hesitated. He knew that he was breaking the law by making an exception, but he couldn't bear the thought of demoting such a good soldier for something as trivial as a tattoo. "All right, Sergeant Pierce, I'll grant you an exception. But if anyone finds out, I'll have to demote you anyway." "Understood, yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir." Sergeant Pierce was overjoyed. She saluted him smartly and hurried out of the office. As soon as she was out of earshot, the colonel picked up the phone and dialed a number. "This is the colonel. I need to speak to the base commander." "Yes, it's urgent." He then explained the situation to the base commander and listened intently. "An exception? Are you sure, sir?" "Positive. Sergeant Pierce is an excellent soldier, and I can't bear to lose her. Besides, it's just a small tattoo. No one will even notice it." "Very well, Colonel. You have my permission to make an exception. Just make sure no one finds out." "Yes, sir." The colonel hung up the phone and smiled. He knew he had made the right decision. A few hours later, Sergeant Pierce was standing in front of the base commander. She was still wearing her dress uniform, but she had removed her jacket. The base commander was a stern-looking man with a thick gray beard. "Sergeant Pierce, I understand you appealed your demotion." "Yes, sir. And I'm granting you an exception to the tattoo policy. However, you must show me where the tattoo is before I confirm it." Sergeant Pierce took a deep breath and slowly unbuttoned the top 3 buttons of her dress shirt. Then she turned around and revealed her tattoo. "Wow, that's quite the piece of art," the base commander said, impressed. "Thank you, sir." "Very well, Sergeant Pierce. You may keep your rank and your job." "Yes. However, if anyone finds out that you have a tattoo, you will be demoted without exception." "Yes, sir." The base commander nodded and dismissed her. As Sergeant Pierce walked away, she couldn't stop smiling. She had kept her job and her dignity. To top it all off, she had won the respect of the base commander. From that day forward, Sergeant Pierce became known as the bravest soldier on the base. Her story inspired other women to stand up for their rights and to challenge the outdated laws and regulations that sought to control their appearance. Sergeant Pierce didn't realize it at the time, but she had started a revolution.